Are you suffering from staff turnover? Too many lost business opportunities? Is your reputation at risk? If so, you know your workplace culture needs improvement, but determining how to do so and where to start is about as fun and effective as trying to assemble a puzzle with no picture to guide you. Culture Change in a Box is a show that takes you on a compelling deep dive into an effective real-time culture change process so you can begin to feel hopeful and re-energized about your business. And now, here are your hosts for Culture Change in a Box, Chris McClellan and Judy Ryan.
Well, greetings, everyone. It's Chris McClellan from the Whole Care Network with my good friend
Judy Ryan from Lifework Systems.
It's great to be here for another episode of Culture Change in a Box.
I'm so happy to be doing this.
Judy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really great. I'm excited. I've got all this information and I'm just bursting at wanting to get it out. So,
well, wait till we start doing video podcasts, and they'll see all our notes on our table and everything. And those, for our listeners, those are coming soon. I think we're into our 6th show today.
Yes,
it's pretty exciting.
Yes.
We're working out the nicks and crannies, but.
Right.
We're creating change ourselves.
Yes, it's very exciting to be able to tell a story to all of you listeners that may be bringing you hope and making you more re-energized about what's possible in your own workplace or in any culture that you're creating.
Because we're really all about creating a life to love.
We are. My purpose statement is to create a world where people love their lives. And I think there are very practical things we can do to make that happen. And it's just a matter of getting that information out.
And one of those avenues is building capacity for change.
Yes.
When we hear the word building, we hear the word capacity. Sometimes that word capacity kind of gets lost in the shuffle.
Yes, I think that people don't recognize that they're not accessing the capacity within themselves that is possible. And so they don't even have this idea of themselves as somebody that is capable of breaking out of the rigidity of the way that it's always been done and really waking up and being able to make sure that they can effectively move in the direction of change without freaking out. Really and truly, there's a lot of people that just the idea of change itself is freak out for them. So how do you minimize that fear and help them build the courage that it takes to go through a change process? Because that's what you're doing.
I'm going to back up just a second because you said a word, I think, rigidity.
Yes.
Rigidity, that's
yes.
a tongue twister early in the morning.
Yes.
But I think if we can eliminate that.
Well, the truth of it is there are some people that, regardless of how they intellectually think about a problem, just the idea of moving into change is confronting for them.
Right.
And some more than others. For my temperament, that is not a problem. I like to see, if I can get from A to B quicker, I'm all over it, right? But some people are like, well, no, we just can't do it that way. It's not the way it's been done. So one of the biggest challenges that a leader has, especially when they're bringing in a responsibility-based model where everybody's expected to be accountable for their relationships and their productivity and their engagement, is that leader has to be able to expressly communicate the responsibilities, the commitments that are required, and help people to have the courage and the bandwidth to be able to pick up those changes and actually live them out. So capacity building, if you don't do it, you will actually set yourself up for failure. You'll actually set yourself up for sabotage because you will be ignoring those cues that have you aware that somebody's saying, no, I won't, you can't make me.
Capacity building is all-encompassing. It's more than just dollars and cents.
It's more than just training. It's more than just mentoring. It's this whole way of saying, how do I help keep intention on what I'm building with my culture and within each person, and how do I help them keep focused on that at the same time? And so part of it is that there's a learning curve. There's a real big learning curve for the owners, the leaders, the executives, but there's also a learning curve for every employee in a responsibility-based workplace, because it's not that that burden is just shouldered by the top people. So, but it starts with the top people. So they have a lot to understand around, how do I introduce this to my staff? How do I have conversations that as soon as they show some things to me, that I'm able to comfortably talk about the elephant in the room? Because that is something that in and of itself is part of a responsibility-based workplace culture, and you have a lot of leaders that may not even want to hit things head on. So that's why they have to understand this is what you're doing and saying and how you're presenting it. And what do you do if somebody says, no, thank you, I don't want to do this culture, right? How do you help them? Because if your mindset is not clear about how you want to see people and how you want to address resistance and rebellion in a way that is not coercive and overpowering, right? Most people don't know how to do that because it hasn't been modeled very well, and they don't expect it to be as frequently occurring as it actually does. And so what happens is, it starts out great. Like usually the leader understands, okay, I have the responsibility to introduce to my people, why are we doing this? What are we doing? Why this company? Why now? So the leader has this obligation to first clarify, we're doing a workplace culture, it's this type of culture, we're bringing in this person because they have this very formalized process, etc., right? That's the easy part. The difficult part is when they say, will you come this way with me? And at first they might even think that they have a yes, and they might, but sometimes they don't. And so what happens is that we're schooling them and recognizing when they don't, and how do they have those tough conversations around that. And it's usually happening in really small ways. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we do is we help to practice with the leaders the kinds of scenarios that they could come up against that would actually cause them to be uncomfortable because it's so early in, and all of a sudden I've got this conversation with somebody where they're not bought in. Mm-hmm. What do I do? Right? And so that is really why capacity building is something we talk about directly. That, this is going to be part and parcel of your responsibility for this kind of culture, is that you're going to have to recognize that you're going to have to help people to become holistically able to move through change in ways that cause the least amount of discomfort and distress and destruction, right?
So we have holistic, mm-hmm. we have responsibility, mm-hmm. we have capacity.
Yes.
All three words that you don't often hear going together at the same time, but they're so critical.
Well, think about it. If you could help increase people's capacity to be accountable and responsible, what kind of workplaces would we have? What kind of homes would we have? What kind of communities would we have? So those three are really, I never thought of it myself, but those are really relevantly tied together, because you can't have freedom and without responsibility and accountability. You can't have joy without responsibility and accountability, but you can't have either of those without building the capacity to do it different. And so it is so important. So what we do is we work with the entire team, but we keep coming back around to what is it that everybody has to learn in this process? So what's the knowledge? And what are the responsibilities of the owner, president, CEO of an organization? What are the responsibilities of all the senior teams and managers and supervisors? What are all the new knowledge that needs to be acquired by the employees? And so they go through a very detailed list of, these are what we're asking you to commit to. And then we go through, we're going to be asking you to commit to all different kinds of behaviors. So let's say I say to you, you're an employee and I'm your boss, and I say, hey, I'm going to bring in this model. It's going to require that you do mentoring sessions with me every month. It's going to require that you do training sessions every month, and that you do workbook activities and so on. And all of a sudden, it turns out that you come to a mentoring session and you haven't done your work, and you were supposed to have. What does that conversation look like, right?
Yes.
That's where capacity building, the rubber hits the road, right? So what we teach people is, how do you have a mindset that does not become coercive? So part of the change, the building the capacity for change, requires that the leader have a mind that is non-judgmental but firm at the same time. So what it looks like is, I would say to you, if you were my employee and I was that kind of leader, I would say, Chris, we talked about these commitments. You actually wrote a letter of intent saying, yes, I'm on board, but I'm seeing in your behavior that you're not actually on board, because you're making excuses, you're coming to these sessions without preparation, etc. I want you on this bus, Chris. I really want you on this bus.
Yes.
And right now you're not. So what are you going to do about it, right? And that conversation can be dicey, because the person typically will say something like, I just don't have time for all this. I'm sorry, but I have a family.
Defensive.
Yeah, I have a family, and this is not, I'm not being paid for it. Well, yes, you are being paid for it, by the way. And I know that it is easy to get overwhelmed, but this is the direction we're going, Chris. So what will you do? and you're waiting for and you're asking for their commitment. Because right now we're at a stalemate, Chris. You're saying I am committed and intending, but your behavior is showing that you are not. And so what will you do? And I'm in a place where I'm not willing to continue without addressing this until we resolve it, right? That's a hard conversation, but it's more important in the very beginning of our project than any other time, when little things are starting to show that the owners recognize that's an opportunity to build capacity.
Sure.
Because this person, even probably most likely unconsciously, is in resistance. And if I, as the leader, come at that person as though they're bad, and this is the trick. We've all been raised with so much punishment reward.
Oh, goodness. That's what we're going to do a whole show on that.
Yes. So part of building capacity is that I, as the leader, or the leaders we train, they have to be able to look at their employees and go, you know what? They do have a right to choose. But I'm also standing in my choice. And it may be that I help them gracefully get off the bus, if that's what it comes to. But I am going to be really clear that it is about choice, and they're not right or wrong for their choice. Now, that's like the mind twist, right? Because we automatically want to say, well, this new culture is the right way, and you not choosing it makes you bad, right? And we have to really work with leaders to help them not have that mind of judgment, to have that mind of, I'm going to be authentically observant of what's going on, but I'm not going to make it something that says you are bad or good. And when you can come at somebody in a firm way where there's no judgment, they will feel it that way. They will feel it as if you're saying to them, it's okay if you don't do this. I want you to do it though. And I want you to work through your barriers, and I'm here to help you through those barriers.
Oh goodness, that's so important, because when you're used to working out of a system, and I'm gonna use the word negative.
Yes.
That power and control.
Yes.
You do it my way or no, or
yes.
It's hard.
In the beginning it is, but what's interesting about it is, yes, you have to invest more time up front, but in the long run, you have people that you can count on, and they can count on you. And you're providing a leadership level that they've probably never had before. And so the long-term sustainable improvements are what we shoot for. That's why we talk about building capacity for change early on, because it is part of what has to be occurring, especially in the front end, in order for the long-term gains. And so it could easily be that a leader would look at this and go, oh man, this sounds really hard. But if they lose sight, they only feel that way if they lose sight of the end goals, of having those really sustainable success stories.
Oh, there's so many directions I want to go with.
Yeah.
How do you get people on the bus, though?
Well, part of it is you have to know why you're getting them on the bus. So one of the things that we do first and foremost with leaders is we walk them through what we call our blueprint process.
Okay.
So
let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So let's say you were a new client and you had said, okay, I kind of get this workplace culture model that you've introduced to me. What do I do first, right? One of the first things I'll do with you is I will walk you through a process where you come up with some memories where you felt the most like the biggest version of yourself, the best version of yourself, where you felt really open and connected and alive. And I would help you to conclude what you were causing, what you were doing, and what you were creating, all of that. And that becomes the ultimate idea of what you like to cause in the world. And there's many ways you could say it. Like mine happens to be, I want to create a world where people love their lives. But when I finally got clear that that's the way that I wanted to hold my stake in the ground, because that's the thing about words, they can help you hold a stake in the ground. So we help the leaders to identify what they want to cause. That's hard for a lot of people because it can seem very abstract. It's kind of like a lot of leaders, when they get to their own purpose statement, they say, ooh, this feels like something the Dalai Lama would say or Gandhi would say. This isn't me.
That's
and what does this have to do with work?
Right.
Recently I was working with a leader where his purpose statement was he wanted to cause greatness. Like, it was so obvious in his examples and in how he lives his life, but just the word freaked him out. He was like, greatness, I don't do greatness. I'm not great. And we really had to work through, because it wasn't that he didn't recognize that purpose. It was that it just scared the bejesus out of him,
sure.
Right? And so when we work with a leader, the very first thing we do, and the thing that we recommend they do going forward, is always open every conversation with every client, with every coworker, with every colleague, every vendor, this is what we do. This is what we cause. This is our purpose. We're causing greatness. We're causing it with ourselves. We're causing it with one another. We're causing it for you and with you and within you. And so when they identify their purpose, that becomes the reason why they're doing the culture change. We're doing it, and now we know we have to operate a certain way in order to cause greatness, for example. And so that's a really big part of capacity building, because what I'm doing is I'm helping the leader always look up to that star, as opposed to getting freaked out that, oh my God, these people I'm not sure I know how to get them on board on the bus. And he does it, or she does it, through the power of that purpose, because that's a bigger picture in your mind of what you're all about.
Do you think people fear being great?
They definitely fear being great. I still sometimes go through that. But
Me too. But
yeah. I mean, there is a quote that I don't know verbatim, but it's our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. It's not our darkness that frightens us. It's our light that frightens us.
It's our light that's frightening.
Yeah, and there's a part of that quote, it's by Nelson Mandela, that says, our playing small does not serve the world. That we were like little children. We were born to be great. We were born to manifest the glory of God. And I believe that, whether you believe religiously or not, I believe we were here to manifest the glory that is possible, that is godlike. And most people tend to think, well, that's not me. And the truth of it is, if we were given the right conditions, the right systems, and the right conversations, we all can be that purposeful and that incredibly creative with our lives, and be able to focus our energies in such a way that we are truly living from the light. But it is frightening, because we have been raised in this system of punishment and reward and judgment, and that prevents us from actually stepping into the joy of playing big, because we think, well, gosh, if I screw it up, I'm going to be in big trouble, and I'm going to get punished. And that's the hardest thing to overcome, and that's why capacity building is so important, because it requires that a leader approach his or her people as guiltless.
And that is so beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And it's hard, because when they're acting out a certain way, they sure look guilty. Right. But you have to hold them as you are guiltless. I get away with saying a ton of challenging things to people, because they can feel how I hold them as being good people.
Oh goodness, I'm going off topic though, but that's one of the reasons why you and I connect so well.
Yes,
is there's we can have these open and honest conversations, because we know how we feel.
Well, and I would say to your audience, those of you that are listening,
our audience,
the reason you're listening, if you're listening to this, is because you resonate with creating practical applications of love. That's the way I put it. A person that's running a company that says, that's baloney, I don't need to care about how people feel, I just need them to do the job and shut up, right? That is not our audience. Yeah. Our audience are you, that realize that people deserve to feel that they are lovable, and that we believe in them, and that we want to see and call forth the greatness in them, and that's like a high for us, right? And so that is why we connect, because we believe that people and inspiration and authenticity, all that's important.
And don't you want to work for somebody that has that philosophy? Work with people that I do. Yeah, I do.
Sometimes people have a temperament where just the feeling nature of a responsibility-based culture is a little overwhelming to them. Sure. We teach things like all people need to feel empowered, lovable, connected, and contributing. And sometimes we'll have people say, well, that's ridiculous. Why lovableness doesn't have anything to do with workplace, and they get rattled. But part of it's because they've been sort of conditioned to believe that it's not stable to get emotional. It's not stable to think of emotions. It's not stable to talk of emotions. And so we're able to bring intellect and the conversation of emotions together, so that those people that are typically frightened of expressions, or where's this headed? Am I going to go into some deep, dark, murky place that's freaking me out? We're able to help them overcome that fear and move past it.
Alleviating those fears, creating capacity.
Yes, creating capacity.
One goes with the other.
It is absolutely essential for culture change. You need to be sensitive and willing to confront any place where people need to stretch into the capacity to change. And that is an ever-moving target, and it requires resiliency, capacity. It really requires strength, determination, perseverance, all of that stuff that a good leader has.
So how does a leader, a good leader, recognize that they need capacity change?
Well, first of all, we teach it to them directly. Mm-hmm. We actually practice things. The more we know about how to do this better and better, the more that we actually present them with scenarios and ask them to, okay, let's say you're sitting with somebody and they do this. What are you going to do about it? So that they get the feeling in their physical being, because there's nothing like learning through the actual experience. We can read a book about how to do this. We can talk to people about how to do this, but we don't really know what it's like till we do it, right?
Right.
So we put people that are in the senior team leaders position into situations where they are confronted with, how would I do? What would I do? How do I feel? How would I get out of my own dark place of not seeing what's happening, not wanting to go there? Mm-hmm. And that's really the responsibility of Lifework Systems, is working with the people that are trying to change a whole community so that they are supported to create, this dynamic in which the whole culture is moving in the same direction. I hope that answered your question.
Oh, very, very much so. The more we talk, the more I realize we have so many future topics for shows.
Oh, absolutely.
We're just getting started.
Yes, and I love what you said. We've got this future path, because we are always trying to help the leaders remember that they're in a process. They are on a roadmap. They are not lost. We know where they are in the process. We'll help them remember where they are, so they have that sense of, I'm not floundering alone out here, not even knowing if I'm making progress or not. So we really help them to know where they are on that roadmap, so that they can continue to build their capacity to change.
So, before we get ready to close this episode, I wonder what would be the first indicator, or if there would be an indicator to a manager or an owner that they're seeing a culture change. They're seeing that this work is actually benefiting.
I love it that you just asked this, because it just happens to fall upon a day where I did some data analysis on a client yesterday. And it was a client that I've been working with for 18 months. We're getting ready to start another year. I did 2 measures of their trust gap. So I measured their trust gap from their employees in January of last year. And the trust gap is, how well are people living these 8 values that build trust? So the questions that are asked are like, hey, Chris, straightforwardness is this. Mm-hmm. How important is straightforwardness? How well is it being fulfilled? So we take that, how important it is to you and how well you think it's being fulfilled. And the difference between those two is called the trust gap. Well, we do that over 8 values. So this particular company's overall trust gap wasn't horrible. It was actually slightly better than the international average, which is 14.7, I think. And theirs was something like 13.7. So they're already got a narrower gap. They have less problems than the international community. But in 1 year, at the end of the year, we had reduced that trust gap by 7 something. So they went from 13.7 to 5.5.
Wow.
That's a tremendous amount of improvement. So all of those places, being honest, being straightforward, being receptive, being disclosing of information without holding back, showing respect, following through on commitments, seeking excellence, and giving recognition, all of those in every single category had improved. And so that's what's exciting, is they're telling me the anecdotal stories of what's better, but I actually have the hard data. Even though it's not necessarily directly tied to their profit margin, those numbers are statistically connected with retention rates, etc.
Well, and that's seeing culture change in reality.
In reality, you can see actual data supporting that people are learning how to communicate effectively, how to confront things in a not only confront things in like the ugly way, but confront things in the positive, holistic way. Because otherwise, you wouldn't be building that sense of respect and all of that.
I know I'm going to go back to a topic that we talked in a previous show, but that's actually how you can measure morale in an office.
Absolutely. It is definitely one of the vital signs we always check, even though it doesn't have the direct correlation like, improving retention, etc. It is a clear indication that things are going well. So.
Oh, this is awesome stuff.
Yeah.
This is awesome stuff.
It's pretty fun.
Because it helps people create a life they love.
It does. And so many of the time, my favorite thing to hear is, I didn't think we could turn that around. I really didn't think we could turn that person, that circumstance, that situation around, and we have. And that's my juice that keeps me going.
That's why we invite all of our listeners to join us in creating a world in which people love their lives. Judy, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Chris.
It gets more fun as we do it.
There's a lot of moving parts. Thank you.
Well, Culture Change in a Box is a part of the Whole Care Network. Check us out online at wholecarenetwork.com, and be sure to visit Judy Ryan at lifeworksystems.com. And I'm creating a life to love by being with awesome people like Judy Ryan. See you soon for another episode of Culture Change in a Box. Bye-bye.